We've got updates on the oblique of Brock Purdy, the 49ers franchise, present and maybe future quarterback. Will even play this Thursday against the Seattle Seahawks. And is it time for me to take an L on the Christian McCaffrey trade? Can you grade the Christian McCaffrey trade yet? We'll get into that all right now on today's episode of Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock here, not with Eric Crocker. He's actually got a storm rolling through Arkansas where he lives, and his power, his Wi-Fi is out. But luckily, it is that day of the week. It is Winky Wednesday, and my guest today is none other than Nicholas Winkler. I do want to thank everybody for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every stinking day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And Wink, it wouldn't be proper on a Winky Wednesday if I didn't give you your proper intro.
Nicholas Winkler, come on down.
Can't believe it.
Wow. How about that, Brock Purdy? By the way, I got to remind everybody, for some new listeners maybe that don't understand the dynamic here, don't know who Nick Winkler is. He's a former colleague of mine. We used to work in the radio biz together. He's a former TV news or TV sports anchor. He's a former radio guy, just like myself. We used to report traffic together. We had a podcast called Gold Faithful that we did once a week back in the day before I jumped on and started doing Locked On 49ers. So I still have Wink come on and join me here. And it's always fun to have him on. So I just wanted to give him that introduction so everyone knows why we bring Nicholas Winkler on every week. And now I say, since you are no longer in the broadcasting business, Wink, I always like to say that you are the voice of the fan. So what does the fan think about this young quarterback, Brock Purdy, now after 2 games?
Well, you know me, I'm always rocking my 49ers shirts, my jackets, my hats, my shoes that my daughter custom made for me. But everywhere you go, the fans are constantly like, yeah, Niners, Purdy, right? Purdy, right? Like, that's the same response I'm getting from everybody. Is like, people are excited because it's really cool what this guy's doing. I mean, you're talking about your third string quarterback, right? When he gets in there, it's like, oh, no, here we go. This guy, Mr. Irrelevant. There's a reason he was the last pick in the draft, and he's small, and he doesn't have much zip on his fastball and this and that. And the guy just looks good play after play. Looks like he knows what he's doing. He's decisive. He's checking down. He's looking at his next guy. He's taking big hits. He's running for touchdowns. Like, I mean, there's a reason they're calling him Big Sock Brock, right? Is because this guy gets after it, man. You love what he's doing out there. It's fun to watch. And how could you not, as a fan, too, watching the game and watching his parents in the stands, they're chanting your son's name at a professional football game. Like, that to me, that got me choked up. I mean, I have kids, so to me, it's like, my accomplishment's cool, whatever, that's fun. But like, to watch your kids go through something like that is just next level cool for the 49ers, spoiling Tom Brady's, coming home game. And oh man, just so much fun to watch. But then I got to stink on something because we get so excited, right? Like, the Niners win, they beat the Bucs, they look good. Brady's looking good. I mean, Purdy's looking good. McCaffrey's looking amazing, this and that. But then Debo gets hurt. It's like, why can't the 49ers get out of a game without a major injury? It's just the storyline all season long, and it breaks your heart. I mean, luckily, it's not very major. They say, 3-ish weeks? Is that the word we're hearing now?
Yeah, it sounds like maybe even he should be back for the playoffs, might even be back for that regular season finale. So their end of regular season is sort of the time, and you don't want him to come back too soon, but you need to be able to make the playoffs and get that seeding in order. So you'd like to have Debo back as soon as possible. So very good news on Debo Samuel, and thinking the worst, right? When he's getting carted off and his hands are in his face. And you're right, man. That was an emotional game.
It was like such a roller coaster, right? Because it comes out too, and Purdy gets destroyed on his first play.
It's like, oh no. You're always worried in a situation like that. Young quarterback, even though he looked good in the game before, it's like, oh no, is this when he turns into a pumpkin? And he just gets demolished on the first play. It's like, oh, could this game go that way? And it's like, no, nice third down, keep the game alive, go, score touchdown first drive. It's like, okay, back in business. And the fact that he had that toughness to not fold after getting earholed on the very first play of the game. You got the GOAT on the other sideline, right? So that's been so impressive, just the way he's carried himself through all this and how prepared he's been, and how a 7th-round rookie quarterback looks like such a veteran and such command of Kyle Shanahan's offense that everyone says is supposed to take 3 years to learn. It's the hardest offense and verbiage and all this. And he's like, it's not that like, how does this compare to Jimmy G? Remember when Jimmy G showed up and he's like, oh yeah, here's what you do. You go, nope, don't like that guy. Nope, he's open. Throw him the ball, And it seems so simple. You couldn't win a single game. Jimmy Garoppolo comes in, makes it look so simple. And now Purdy is doing to Garoppolo what Garoppolo did to CJ Beathard and Brian Hoyer in 2017.
Well, it's funny because when Shanahan drafted a guy like CJ Beathard, right, it was because he was a longtime starter in college, right? And he ran like kind of a pro style offense. So I feel like that's kind of what they did with Purdy too, right? They went after a guy who started a ton of college games. So he's got a lot under his belt, set like every single record there, and so you bring in a guy like that and you expect him to be prepared. You expect him to be ready because he knows what is asked of the position, and he's backed it up. I mean, he beat out Sudfeld. We keep talking about that, but it's a big deal. Like, it's just Nate Sudfeld. They gave Nate Sudfeld like $2 million. They wanted him to be the backup quarterback, and Brock Purdy had other plans. And he showed it early on in spring or in preseason, and you thought, okay, it's just preseason. He's going against third string guys, but you saw it. You saw that the tenacity, the ability to make the throws that needed to be made. Yeah, he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, and yeah, he underthrew Ayuk on the deep pass, but he saw Ayuk and he took the chance, and he wasn't worried about that. And that's the kind of thing that I think Garoppolo gets hit on a lot too, right? When people actually try to knock Garoppolo, they talk about he doesn't take those big chances. He doesn't like to force the ball, and maybe Purdy does do that a little bit, and it's probably going to bite him at some point. But to this point, like some of the throws he's making, you're like, oh, nice, like holding your breath, like no, don't throw it late there. Okay, all right,
yeah. Especially the first game, actually fewer mistakes in game 2 than game 1. For him, and he's got a playmaker quality to him, gets out on the move a little bit. So it's been really fun to watch, and hopefully the 49ers can ride that wave, and Brock Purdy is the guy. I mean, what a story. The last pick in the draft. It's kind of insane what we've gone through, covering this football team and the 49ers over the last couple of years. It's just insane, and each step is crazier than the next. And of course, so like your first starting quarterback, Trey Lance, breaks his ankle. He's done for the year. Then the backup, who's also a starter, who is then your starter, breaks his ankle. He's done for the rest of the season. Maybe can come back in the playoffs. We'll see. And then Brock Purdy comes in and does what he's doing. But then it's also it's like the way that we're wired. It's like Brock Purdy comes in and you start talking about playoffs and Super Bowl as if he's not going to get hurt. And what happens? He's got an oblique injury. So we're on to Josh Johnson, right? It's so funny because every time a game starts, you think, oh, this is awesome. Brock Purdy and Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. And in your mind, it's like, okay, none of these guys will ever get hurt again for the rest of their lives. And that's, each game, it kind of starts that way. And you're like brand new, naive child watching a football game. Hey, and then it's like, oh yeah. And then Deebo Samuel gets hurt. And now Brock Purdy's got this oblique and on a short week. And a lot of guys are kind of banged up. So would you be against sitting Brock Purdy if you thought that his oblique was something that could get hurt worse on the short week? And what if we see now Josh Johnson, the 4th starting quarterback this year for the 49ers at Seattle?
I mean, obviously, if he can re-injure it or injure it more, you sit him down. And this is a big game. It's a huge game. You're playing Seattle in Seattle, right? They're pretty much the division's on the line. You can basically win the West by winning this game on Thursday night. But at the same time, Jimmy Garoppolo's not coming back anytime soon, right? Trey Lance not coming back anytime soon. There's nobody else out there except for Josh Johnson. So if you do risk Purdy and he does get hurt, then all of a sudden things look a whole lot worse than they did before the start of the game. So obviously they're going to be in contact with their staff, their medical staff. They're going to be like, look, is this guy going to hurt it anymore? And that being said, also, even if they're like, yeah, he could risk it, well, then Kyle's got to design a plan for that. He needs to not put Purdy in harm's way. It's going to be quick things or throw the ball away, right? It's going to be a lot of running. I want to see a lot more Derek Mason. Like, he's looking really good out there too. Like, I want to see a lot of ground game.
Jordan
right?
Mason. Jordan Mason.
Yeah.
He called back Eric Mason, the old Titans receiver.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Who doesn't want Derek Mason back?
I
But no.
I would take prime Derek Mason on this roster right now for the duration of the regular season for sure.
Mason's been looking good. Obviously, you don't want to risk McCaffrey either on a short week. He ran the ball a lot, got hit a lot. He's coming off of a knee thing as well recently.
Irritation.
So yeah. So are you going to get irritated again? I don't know, but I want the 49ers to play it smart on Thursday night. I want to make sure that they're not going to put anybody in harm's way. And if they are, maybe you do give them the night off because it's a short week. And then you've got 3 games that are very winnable after this, right? With the Commanders, right? And the Raiders. And then what do you finish with? The Cardinals? Like, come on.
Yep.
This isn't a must win. Yeah, right. That's a tough call too, though, for them because do they do that? And then what do they do at quarterback? Like Kyler Murray, when's he coming back? Probably not going to be back to start the season. Like now you got a coach who comes in and doesn't have his starting quarterback for maybe half the season. It's like that's a really tricky spot too for them. But like I was saying, this isn't a must-win game for the 49ers. So you don't have to put everything out there. You don't have to risk injury if it's not necessary. So I hope they're really smart about it come Thursday.
Okay, of course, we'll get to the Winks Wish Watch a little bit later in this show. We'll talk a little bit of Christian McCaffrey, and we do have an official update, by the way, on Brock Purdy's oblique and what that outlook looks like potentially and what's going on at practice this week for the San Francisco 49ers. Next, today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And when you're looking for the right people, why would you not go to the network that has over 800 million members? So, if you want to find the best people, go to where all of the people already are that either have jobs or might be looking for jobs and put your job on that purple hiring frame on your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools, screening questions, make it easy to narrow that list. I mean, you don't want 800 million applicants probably at your small business, but you can whittle that down to just the right candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and eventually hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we're sure you're going to love. That's why you can find a sneak peek of Think Like a Champion available right now as a bonus episode on Locked On Presents. Think Like a Champion is a brand new podcast from Russell Wilson and Audible. Russ, a champion on the field, but off of it, we rarely know the grind and the path to greatness. And what an interesting path that is, especially with the way this season has gone. And it actually makes me more interested on that path and kind of trying to figure out what that human being is like behind the facade of Russell Wilson. And then hearing him talk to guys like Tim Tebow, right? Like how could you miss that episode and that conversation to try to learn what makes those guys tick, those unique individuals. And two-time Super Bowl champion MVP Von Miller also delivering sharp insights about performing at your highest level in moments of extreme pressure. Head over to Locked On Presents for a sneak peek of Think Like a Champion or catch the full series available everywhere you get your podcasts, including Audible. Available now. Audible, get in the game. All right, Wink. Talking about Debo and that injury. And this is a question that's been thrown around a lot. If you're Kyle Shanahan, is there a certain point where you say, okay, and even Jerry Rice chiming in saying, you got to stop using the skill guys. And he calls out Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Debo Samuel by name, saying, look, got to stop doing this, Kyle. Can't keep getting these guys hurt because you're running out of guys. And you got a little lucky with Debo that he's going to be back for the playoffs, and pretty sure the 49ers are going to be in the playoffs. Where that seating is, I'm not sure. Be really big to win the West and have that done on Thursday and really just knock those Seahawks out of it, right? But is Jerry Rice on to something? And I've talked about this since last year. So this isn't like a new hindsight thing. Oh, Debo just got hurt. Because I was like, this Debo usage, a little much. 8-10 carries, let's dial that back. But, a couple carries here and there, I don't have a big problem with it. But of course, when you hand up the ball off to a guy, even if it's not supposed to be a handoff up the middle, when he's coming around, and maybe it should go outside, but maybe that hole is inside and he cuts inside. So, handing the guy the ball behind the line of scrimmage, there's a chance that he's going to get sandwiched between a 300-pounder and a 250-pounder with bad intentions. We saw Jimmy, we saw Lance all get hit by big guys. Jimmy's was get the ball out of your hand. It wasn't running up the middle, but it got hit by people. And you're always trying to not get your quarterback hit. Debo, I think it was 3 guys that were sandwiching Debo, pulling him all different directions. Luckily, it wasn't a knee. Luckily, it wasn't an ankle. But Debo out, you can't afford to lose someone like Christian McCaffrey, but he's a stinking running back. He can do a lot of other things. Like Christian McCaffrey's been really good, and we'll get into that trade in a second. But just focusing on Kyle, do you put any blame on Kyle now? And we've already had this conversation this year when it was Trey Lance. Have you thought about it more? Can Kyle do something maybe a little bit more different? What do you think about Kyle Shanahan and the whole using your skill players to run the football and quote unquote run up the middle?
It's tough, right? It's because Kyle's gonna Kyle. He's gonna keep giving the ball to Debo. Last year they had to, right? There were so many injuries, they had to use Debo Samuel as a running back, and he made himself a lot of money doing that. But that being said, that's not what you drafted him for. That's not what you're paying him for. You're paying him to be on the field, for one, to be healthy and to make plays. And they don't have to be up the middle. Like, you want to run with him, pitch it out to him, like, how I feel about even just running McCaffrey in between the tackles. Like, that's not, to me, a great idea because, as you said, big guys with bad intentions. That is what the trenches are all about. And you don't want these guys getting rolled up on. It could be, and it usually is, it's just a complete accident. It's a freak accident, right? When these kind of things happen, it's maybe not even the guy that's tackling him that actually causes the injury. So somebody maybe needs to sit Kyle down and be like, look, buddy, this isn't the best idea. You're getting your guys hurt. I mean, I know he knows it, clearly, but he keeps doing it. So then you think, he knows it, but does he care? Like, does he think that it's not his fault? Does he think that it's going to happen regardless if he calls it up the middle or not? Like, I don't know. It's really a hard call for me because some of those plays work, right? Some of those plays are huge where they're not expecting the guy to go up the middle. All of a sudden, there he is 40 yards or 50 yards down the field. Christian McCaffrey scoring a touchdown, right? Like, they do work. You know why they call them? Because if you just are always tossing everything outside, then they're going to be prepared for that too. And those aren't going to work. So, it's a fine line. I think that Kyle needs to walk, but I think that he definitely needs to be careful. Again, I'm going to say what I said earlier about this Thursday night game. I don't want to see any of those on Thursday night. If you do, maybe give it to Mason. Maybe Davis Price needs to get some carries up the middle. Like, give it to the guys that are big and built for that sort of thing, and maybe keep your skill position guys out in the flat, out in the open.
You don't want to put your most valuable players in the most harmful position.
Doesn't make sense.
That's the best way to put it. And
yeah,
and I hate the argument. So I didn't really blame Kyle much this time because he wasn't running Debo. That wasn't really designed to go up the middle necessarily. And he wasn't running Debo 10, 12 times. It was a couple of runs, and he had a big touchdown run around the edge because Debo's so good at getting the ball around the corner, right? And so you don't want to take that away. Then there's the OW stuff, the positionless football. Does it make everybody more valuable because Christian McCaffrey's a running back, but then you can treat him like a receiver, and Debo's a receiver, and then you can treat him like a running back? Or would they be just as valuable if you just put them in their spots and let him play, So there's that element. But then I do also have a problem on the other side when people say it's football, you can get hurt on any play. And it's like, that's just,
yes.
it's bad. It's bad statistics. That's not statistically reality, right? You can get in a car accident every time you get in a car. It doesn't mean you should drive drunk because, you could get in a car accident anyway,
Right.
When you're playing blackjack, you just keep hitting. Oh, hey, I could bust anyway, so why not keep hitting and try to get exactly 21? It's like, well, there's a statistical reason why you shouldn't, and you can definitely navigate it. I think Kyle could navigate it better and give his team a better statistical chance to be more healthy than they are. And when you continually one of the most injured teams in the league, you have to stop just like blaming luck and start looking at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, what can we do maybe that's a little bit different? Still use our playmakers, but maybe not put them as much in harm's way. And I would definitely say that running your quarterback up the middle consistently is not good business. And I would say if you have really valuable players that are so good like Christian McCaffrey in the passing game, Christian McCaffrey lining out wide on that touchdown pass, puts a move, makes a play on the ball. He wasn't in the backfield. He was a straight up receiver covered by a corner. Like, he didn't need to be a running back for that play to work. You know what I mean? So at this point, I would be like, look, let's switch Christian McCaffrey's usage to more like Debo's usage and go 80-20 pass to run instead of, hey, here's a running back, little throw here, running back, right? Because Christian McCaffrey's that good of a receiver, and that's where he's more valuable, just like Debo. And the reason you're more valuable is because you're so much more likely to get hurt as a running back. And oh yeah, every year Kyle Shanahan has an undrafted free agent running back like he does again this year who can get 5 yards a carry.
Yeah. And so, okay, talking about running backs, talking about Christian McCaffrey, I know you were going to bring up if you think that was a valuable trade, right? So
yes,
let me ask you, we can go to break, but let me pose this question first. Does your answer change today as it did 3 days ago before the Debo injury? Like, how much more valuable is McCaffrey right now because Debo is now out?
He becomes absolutely more valuable today than he was 5 days ago.
Right, but the trade in a whole, do you think that it greatly
increases
the win?
I will tell you, I will say no, it does not. And I will tell you why. Nothing, in fact, that's happened so far this season makes the trade either worth it or not worth it yet when it comes to Christian McCaffrey. But we'll get to the official answer next, and then I'll talk a little bit more why after I talk about our friends at BetOnline. Niners are favorites on the road at Seattle short week. Those are usually scheduled losses for most teams. On the road, Seattle's a tough place to play on a Thursday. Your team's a little banged up late in the year. You can find those odds at BetOnline. 3.5-point favorites on the road are those San Francisco 49ers. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. You've got it all at BetOnline, and you want to make sure you get over to BetOnline and get informed before you make those bets. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those as well at BetOnline. Always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting information and make your wagers. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about BetOnline, where the game starts. You know what, Wink? I think it's maybe time to do a little something different on this episode, and that is bring on Mr. Eric Crocker.
Hey!
A great catch.
His screen's black for some reason. Maybe his internet isn't back. Hey, there he is.
I'm back. I was on the wrong Wi-Fi, and I realized it. And I'm like, oh man, I'm on the wrong Wi-Fi, but I'm here. Still storming. No tornado has hit yet, so I think I'm fine. I think I'm okay.
Good news.
That's fantastic. I didn't think you were going to make it today. A big old storm coming through there. Is this like one of those?
Yeah.
I forget what the movie was back in the day, but it used to scare the crap out of me that some big storm was going to come, and they had to like get everybody ready and go down into like this big storm bunker, and I was like, I'm glad I don't live over there. And it's probably what people who live in other parts of the country and other parts of the world think about California. Everyone's always talking about earthquakes. Like, even when there's earthquakes, I don't even feel them, But I also kind of feel like we're due for an earthquake. I always get that feeling too. It's been like a little too long, right? Like 1989. It's been a while. But I'm glad you're okay, Croc, and all the stuff hasn't like flown out of your house.
Right. They have like some storm shelters. So if I hear the sirens going off, which that has happened, I'll start to kind of prepare for, all right, what do we do next? So
yeah,
that's scary. That's scary. Okay, we're getting into the Christian McCaffrey portion of this episode because I see it when we go live when Christian McCaffrey has a good game. I see it in the chat, in a few people on Twitter, because, a lot of people came at me, especially when the trade happened, because I thought, I probably wouldn't have done that trade. I think the 49ers didn't need to give up that much for a running back. One key part of all that is that Christian McCaffrey clearly more than a running back, right? Like he does a lot. And I think Christian McCaffrey's even been better, maybe not statistically necessarily, but just from watching him play, what he can do, some of the plays he's made as a receiver, which I have absolutely loved, how he goes about his business when they talk about him, his character, how he fits into the locker room, his competitiveness, his preparedness, all of those things. I've liked that a lot. I think he fits in really well. And clearly he makes the 49ers a better football team. I think you guys would both agree with that, right? Like the Niners are better because they have Christian McCaffrey. But when you start evaluating a trade, people want me to take the L on it because he's playing good. You know why he's playing good? Because he's a good player that we already we already knew he was going to be a good player, right? The reason you can't grade this trade is because exactly what we've seen happen to Deebo Samuel and Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. Hit players are hurt players, and Christian McCaffrey gets hit as much or more than all of those guys. And he's still a running back. Even though he gives you a lot more, he still does the dangerous thing, which is be a running back, especially a running back in Kyle Shanahan's offense. So when you're talking about trading future picks and paying him $12 million next year and the year after, then like 2025 is when you can really close the book and grade this trade. The 49ers didn't bring in Christian McCaffrey to win games in November and December. They brought him in to put him over the top to go win a title. So, hopefully we're talking about this is a big W for the 49ers, and I'll take an L all day if you're hoisting a Lombardi in February, right? But it's way too early to grade. So every time he does something good, it's like, yeah, he's a good player. The reason running backs have less value is because they're in such danger of getting hurt, as we've seen from other guys who carry the ball. And then if you don't want to use your running back like a running back, it becomes this circular argument of like, okay, you don't want to utilize your weapons, but then if you don't utilize them enough, then is he worth going out and getting them because you don't utilize them enough, and it just becomes this circular thing. So look, if he stays healthy and the Niners are winning and he's worth $12 million next year and the year after, I mean, like that's how you win a trade, because you put this on your credit card. Of course you get better today. You win every trade if you just trade away future stuff for right now. Of course you're better now. So that's my response to folks that are like, oh, you got to take the L because Christian McCaffrey's good. We knew Christian McCaffrey was good. Like, how important is he to the 49ers winning games is a big question. Like, did they win a bunch of games because they have him, and that they wouldn't have won because he wasn't on the team? That's, I think, a better question right now.
So that's part of my question. Do you believe that he improves the 49ers' chances of winning a Super Bowl? Because ultimately that's what you're trying to do, right? When you make this trade, you want to improve your chances. And obviously we saw the 49ers in the NFC Championship last season with Elijah Mitchell, 6th-round rookie running back. The year before, we watched them run their way to the Super Bowl, or a couple years prior, watched them run their way into the Super Bowl with Raheem Mostert, undrafted, was on 7 different teams. Tevin Coleman, a guy who wasn't a high draft pick. So I think from that standpoint, that's the question, right? When you factor in the value of those guys and how you got those guys, whether it was free agency and a 5-year deal, or an undrafted guy that was a journeyman, or a 6th-round running back. Does Christian McCaffrey increase your chances over what those guys were able to give you to get to that same point? And I think that's the question right there. What's the value on that?
And what's the value on the championship, right? I mean, how many Rams fans right now would be like, oh, I don't want to give up all that stuff for what we got last year? No, they'll do it again in a heartbeat because they won the Super Bowl.
That's a good question, because I've seen some Rams fans that are kind of having remorse right now. They're like, oh my God, like this team is awful. Like, how long
that's horrible.
That's another great question. How long does that last?
Mm-hmm.
The euphoria.
We had that conversation. Do we not answer? We had that question. When did we do that? Like maybe a year ago, when we talked about winning a Super Bowl, or being consistently extremely competitive.
Yes.
So I think the way we framed it was, would you rather kind of guarantee for 1 year you can win a Super Bowl, or for every year not know if you're going to win, but know that you're going to be extremely competitive, as opposed to being what the 49ers have been over the last 20 years, which is they have about 5 really good runs over 22 years or whatever it is, 20 years. But there has been a lot of ugly that's really hard to go through. And I think the Rams right now, where it's like you won and that's exciting, do you still, are you still high off of that win? Do you still use that? Because right now your team is crappy and it's hard to watch, and then you don't have a first round draft pick. And it's just like, what do you have to look forward to? So that's kind of the trade-off. I think most fans would say, oh, give me the Super Bowl. But I know for me, I would take the potential every year of winning a Super Bowl over a guaranteed Super Bowl, but just because I enjoy watching a really good team. If this team right here, and with Christian McCaffrey, gets to the NFC Championship game and they lose, obviously it's a bummer to lose like it was last year. But I still enjoy the ride. I still enjoy right now, December 13th, Tuesday, knowing my team has a chance, as opposed to the Rams and some of these other teams where it's like, you are trash. You're not doing anything this year. And that was the 49ers for a lot of years. Like that's just so tough. So what, we did ask that question, we framed it a certain way.
It's interesting. And I'm with you, Croc, because I'm more of an anticipation guy. I like the lead up. I like looking at things and breaking it all down more so than the euphoria of winning and being like, yay, we won. Now what?
Now you suck and you're struggling to win 3 games or whatever.
But there's also the flip side where you always suck, right? The team like the Lions, they're doing good right now, but they've sucked for so long they would give up anything.
Right, and that's what's hard. Like if you just haven't won at all, you probably think, man, I'd just give it all up for that one trophy. But I would pick, even if you said, okay, the Lions are going to, or you say your team, like the Rams, you're a fan of the Rams, you're going to win one, and then you're going to be the Lions for a while. You don't know how long. It could be a decade.
Right.
It could be your whole life, like the Lions have been for our whole lives. They've won one playoff game since the Super Bowl era, I believe. It's so insane, bad. Right? But I'd rather root for the Steelers, who are always just so consistent, always in it. You can believe, you can go buy tickets for the following season, knowing that this team's going to be competitive and pretty good in most cases, and they've had a little ups and downs, but they're always pretty competitive and run their organization a certain way. I would much rather be a fan of that team than the team that gets to win one and is just garbage otherwise, because that's not that fun. But
we have to ask the fans this question and see what they say.
I would love to hear.
We asked before. I forget the responses.
Let us all know on Twitter. Let us know in the YouTube comments. What would you rather have? A consistently competitive team, even if it doesn't mean you could win one, but you still.
But you might. But there's a chance.
Guarantee you're going to win one, but otherwise you're pretty garbage for a while, for a long time.
We say that, but how much does it hurt to lose a Super Bowl? Like it hurts so
bad. That makes when you do eventually win it, because that's what I would say about a competitive team is you can still get there and win it, and then it just feels that much better. Right. Yeah. Rather than buying a title like the Rams. And then that's the other thing is like now you can come back as a 49ers fan. So you have a friend that's a Rams fan and they're like gloating. Hey, we beat you in the NFC Championship game. We got a Lombardi trophy. We won. When's the last time you guys won? And then the 49ers get to come back and say, well, guess what? Your team's trash again, and we might win one this year. And guess what? We might win one the next year and the next year. So that's why I have such a long view when it comes to team building. And I don't have the, hey, let's trade it all, F them picks mentality. So that's why I look at things differently. I'm like, running backs get hurt. I probably wouldn't spend a lot on them. Where other people are like, give me the good guy right now. And so I understand both sides of those things, but that's why we're on different ideas when it comes to things like that. But make no mistake, Christian McCaffrey's awesome. And how much he gives in the passing game has been the key for how much extra impactful he has been, which has been really good. I mean, seeing that play, and Croc, you weren't on when I talked about it. You don't even have to, like, I would straight up use him as a wide receiver. Like, I would use him in Debo's role completely from here on out. Hand the ball to the other dudes, keep him from getting hit as much as a running back gets hit. He was straight up on that touchdown pass from Brock Purdy last week. He was straight up a wide receiver, lined up wide, covered by a DB, toasted him, made a play on the ball in the air, toe tap. Like, he didn't have to be a threat of being a running back on that play for that play to work. You know what I mean?
I recently saw that play again, and I thought there was someone on my morning show who had brought it up, and he was like, "Oh, it was an underthrown ball," and I'm like, "What? Like that ball was a dot. Like it was on the money, corner in the end zone, back pylon." And then I watched it, like I watched the replay of the game on all 22, and I'm like, "Oh, maybe it wasn't as good of a pass as I remember." And it was a terrific job by him with the adjustment to be able to kind of slow his body down, turn, jump, adjust to the ball in the air, catch it, and make sure that he kept his feet in bounds. Like it ended up being a lot more difficult than I think it had to be. But the fact that he was able to make that type of play. And maybe that's where he's like, hey, F those picks because we have a running back that can do those type of things down the field.
Right. And that's why it's like I want him to do that more and not get hurt playing running back, and then he's not that in the playoffs because he's hurt.
Agreed.
That's the 100%. Thing that worries me about any running back. Hit people or hurt people. It's that the statistics thing again. The blackjack. You keep hitting, you're going to bust. And I want to keep hitting on these really important players for the 49ers offense. So that does worry me a little bit. And that definitely is a factor. Even though he does other things that aren't running back things, he's still a running back. And the reason running backs don't have as much value as they should, like give me Bo Jackson all day long. I'll give first round picks up for Bo Jackson. But guess what? He had to have a hip replacement, right? Because he played running back. You know what I mean? So like, if you guarantee they don't get hurt, then that changes the factor. But even still, they're easily replaceable. We've seen it in the 49ers offense with other running backs just carrying the ball. They can have success. We've seen it with the Panthers, who Deontay Foreman, who they got off the street, has just as good yards per carry as Christian McCaffrey did this year, right? They haven't missed a beat running, and they're actually playing better football than they did earlier in the season with Christian McCaffrey. But his receiving ability, that's what gives him the extra value, and I want to see him doing that more, getting hit hard less. That's sort of what I would say about it. And by the way, how about this? Talking about the Rams winning a title, where the Niners are, all this stuff, Christian McCaffrey. How about this? Jaquiski Tartt catches the interception. The 49ers win, not the Rams. Rams go home. Rams are the team that is already F them picks. The Rams are the team that feels the urgency to go make a trade, not the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey's on the Rams right now and not the 49ers. How about that?
Different.
And I don't know like how much better they would be. I don't think they would be better.
If they don't have Donald or Stafford, they're still going to be screwed, right?
Right.
Well, what's crazy is we're 36, and a half minutes into this thing, and we haven't even mentioned the 49ers defense. Like they've got clearly the best defense. We're a little bit spoiled, I think, right now as 49er fans, kind of nitpicking here and there.
100%.
You hear it on the streets. Yeah, and so, it's a big game Thursday. Also, they got the best punter in the league. Winks Wishwatch, man. 3 more punts, 1 inside the 20. He leads the NFL inside the 20, and he kicked it 62 yards. The guy's a stud.
And thanks for reminding me what time it is, Wink. So we got to go. Wink, thanks as always for jumping in. Croc, so glad that you are safe and that you're able to jump in at the end of this pod as well. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen. And sure, keep coming at me for any of the takes that we have on this podcast in the comments on Twitter at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker, at Bay Area Wink. Croc and I will be back with Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. It's already time for Week 15 crossover style tomorrow, right here, Locked On 49ers.
See ya.